She stood me up, and the woman beside me said, "Guess I'm your date now." Part 1. I checked my phone again. 7:42 p.m. The screen glowed back at me with nothing new, just the same last message I'd been rereading for the past 10 minutes. Parking now, smile. That had been sent at 7:14. I let the phone drop into my palm and exhaled through my nose, forcing myself not to look around the restaurant like a lost kid in a grocery store. The place was warm and softly lit, the kind of spot people picked when they wanted to impress, or pretend they had their life together for at least one evening. Across from me, the empty chair felt personal. A waiter hovered nearby, doing that professional half-turn that said, "I see you but I'm not going to embarrass you by asking questions yet." 2 menus sat on the table, neatly aligned. I'd ordered water for both of us earlier without thinking. Now there were 2 untouched glasses, condensation beating down the sides like they were quietly mocking me. Blind dates were awkward enough when both people actually showed up. I typed another message. Me. "Hey, just checking in, everything okay?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. I stared at the screen, jaw tightening. That was usually the moment hope made its last stand before retreating completely. I placed the phone face down, fingers lingering on it like I might still feel it vibrate through sheer will. I straightened my posture, reminding myself that I was a grown man sitting alone at a table, not someone being publicly rejected, though the difference felt razor thin. That's when a voice came from my right. "Well," she said, casual but curious, "either you're waiting on someone very important, or you're losing an intense staring contest with your phone." I turned before I could talk myself out of it. She was seated at the small round table beside mine, angled slightly toward me like she'd been debating whether to say something. A glass of red wine rested near her hand. She looked composed in that effortless way that didn't come from trying too hard. Dark hair pulled into a loose knot, a few strands escaping like they'd earned their freedom. Simple black dress. No flashy jewelry. Just confidence. Her eyes flicked briefly to the empty chair across from me. "Let me guess," she said. "Blind date." I laughed quietly, more relief than humor. "Is it that obvious?" She smiled. 2 menus, untouched water, and the expression of a man reconsidering his life choices. "I've seen it before." I shook my head. "Harsh. Accurate. But harsh." She lifted her glass slightly. "How long?" "Long enough that I'm starting to feel bad for the waiter." "Ah," she said. "That's the danger zone." I hesitated, then added, "She said she was parking half an hour ago." "Oof." She winced sympathetically. "I'm sorry." The way she said it, simple, sincere, caught me off guard. Not pity. Just understanding. She studied me for a moment, then leaned back in her chair, considering something. "Okay," she said slowly. "This might be wildly inappropriate." My eyebrow lifted on instinct. "I'm listening." She nodded toward the space between our tables. "If she's not coming, and I'm already here alone because my date decided transparency was optional, then..." She paused, lips curving like she was enjoying this far too much. "Guess I'm your date now." For a second, the restaurant noise faded. The clinking glasses, the low music, the hum of conversations, it all dulled as my brain tried to catch up. "You're serious?" I asked. She shrugged lightly. "Why not? Worst case, we eat, laugh, and never see each other again. Best case," her eyes met mine, steady and unreadable, "we don't regret tonight." I looked at the empty chair. Then at her. Every rational voice in my head tried to interrupt. "You don't know her. This is weird. This doesn't happen." But something about her calm confidence, the absence of pressure, made it feel easy. "I'm Daniel," I said, standing. Her smile widened, genuine now. "Claire." I pulled out the chair across from me. "Care to officially defect?" "Bold of you to assume I wasn't already planning to," she said, rising with her wine glass and moving with an ease that suggested she rarely second-guessed herself. The waiter appeared almost instantly, relief flickering across his face like he'd been rooting for me from the sidelines. 2 after all. Claire sat, crossing her legs. "Looks that way." Menus were cleared. Orders placed. Just like that, the moment settled into something real. "So," Claire said, resting her chin lightly on her hand, "tell me about the woman who stood you up." I considered. "Honestly, I don't know enough to be mad. We texted for a week. She seemed nice. Normal. No red flags. Sometimes," Claire said, "people are better at the idea of showing up than the act." I nodded slowly. What about your almost date? She sighed, rolling her eyes. He waited until I arrived to tell me he was emotionally unavailable but curious. I grimaced. That's impressively honest and completely useless. Exactly. She lifted her glass. To actually showing up. We clinked glasses. Conversation unfolded naturally after that. Not the stiff, interview-style questions I'd come to expect from first dates, but stories, observations, little shared annoyances. She told me about her job in design, how she liked fixing things people didn't even realize were broken. I told her about mine, about the quiet satisfaction of solving problems no one wanted to deal with. She listened, not just waiting for her turn to speak, but actually listening. When she laughed, it wasn't polite. It was real, unguarded. At one point, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down. Unknown contact. Hey, I'm so sorry, something came up. Are you still there? I stared at it, the message suddenly feeling distant, irrelevant. Claire noticed. Let me guess, she said softly. Resurrection text. I nodded. Yeah. She didn't ask what I'd say. Didn't push. Just waited. After a moment, I turned the phone face down again. I think, I said, surprising myself with how sure I sounded, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Her smile softened, not triumphant, not flirtatious. Just, pleased. Good, she said. Because I was hoping you'd say that. And sitting there, across from a woman who hadn't been part of the plan, I felt something shift, quietly, unmistakably. Being stood up, I realized, might have been the best thing that happened to me all night. She stood me up, and the woman beside me said, "Guess I'm your date now." Part 2. By the time dessert menus arrived, the restaurant had thinned out. The early crowd was gone, replaced by the softer energy of people lingering, those who weren't in a rush to return to their lives just yet. Candlelight flickered against the windows, and outside, the city had settled into that late evening hum that felt more intimate than loud. Claire traced the rim of her wine glass with one finger, listening as I finished a story about a failed attempt at cooking something far too ambitious for a Tuesday night. So you set off the smoke alarm, she said, amused, and still decided to finish the meal. I had already committed emotionally, I replied. At that point, backing out felt like admitting defeat. She laughed, shaking her head. That might be the most honest thing you've said all night. Only because I'm not trying to impress you. Her gaze lingered on me for half a second longer than before. Funny, she said. I think that's exactly why you are. Something about the way she said it, quiet, certain, made my chest tighten. We shared a slice of cake neither of us had planned on ordering. Forks met occasionally over the plate, our hands brushing once, then again. Neither of us apologized. Neither of us pulled away too quickly. Eventually, the waiter came by with the check, placing it gently at the edge of the table like he didn't want to interrupt something delicate. I've got it, I said automatically. Claire raised an eyebrow. Daniel. I met her look. Please, let me. She studied me, then smiled. All right, but I'm choosing what we do next. Fair. Outside, the night air was cool, the kind that made you breathe a little deeper without realizing it. We stood on the sidewalk for a moment, neither of us moving, like the date wasn't quite ready to end, even though neither of us had expected it to exist in the first place. There's a coffee place 2 blocks down, Claire said. Open late. Good music. No pressure. I smiled. Lead the way. We walked side by side, hands occasionally brushing as the sidewalk narrowed. The city lights reflected off the pavement, and somewhere down the street, someone laughed loudly enough to remind me that the world was still spinning around us. Inside the cafe, it was warm and dim, mismatched chairs and worn wooden tables giving it a lived-in charm. A record played softly in the background. We ordered coffee we didn't really need and took a small table near the window. So, I said, wrapping my hands around the mug, can I ask you something a little personal? She nodded. You already have. What made you say yes tonight? I asked. Not to me, just to being here. She looked down at her coffee, thoughtful. I almost didn't come, she admitted. I was tired. A little cynical. I told myself I'd leave if it didn't feel right within 10 minutes. And then I saw you sitting there, she said, lifting her eyes back to mine, trying not to look disappointed. And I thought, at least he showed up. I swallowed. I'm glad you did too. Silence settled, not awkward, but full. The kind that didn't need to be filled. Claire leaned back slightly. You know what I like about tonight. What? There's no backstory pressure, she said. No expectations. Just two people who ended up in the same place by accident. Some of the best things happen that way, I said. Her phone buzzed then. She glanced at it, lips pressing together briefly before she set it face down on the table. Resurrection text. I asked gently. She nodded. Apology. Excuses. An invitation to try again. And I think, she said softly, I already am. The cafe lights reflected in her eyes, and for a moment, everything else faded. The missed dates, the almosts, the people who hadn't shown up when they were supposed to. We talked until the barista began stacking chairs. Outside again, the night felt quieter now, stretched thin with the promise of morning somewhere in the distance. Claire hugged her coat closer. I should go, she said, though she didn't move. Yeah, I agreed, equally still. We stood there, the unspoken question hovering between us. She broke the silence first. This doesn't have to be a one-time, right? Not if you don't want it to be, I said. She smiled, then stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something subtle, warm. For the record, she said, I'm really glad she didn't show up. So am I. Her hand brushed mine, tentative but deliberate. I took it, feeling the warmth of her fingers curl into my palm like it belonged there. She didn't pull away. Text me, she said, reciting her number softly as I typed it in. Not tonight. Tomorrow. I like anticipation. I grinned. Noted. She leaned in, pressing a kiss to my cheek. Light, unhurried, intentional. Then she stepped back, eyes lingering on mine. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Claire. I watched her walk away until she disappeared around the corner. Only then did I pull out my phone again. The earlier message glowed on the screen, suddenly insignificant. I deleted it. As I headed home, the night felt different, not louder or brighter, just aligned. Like something small but important had clicked into place. I hadn't gone looking for Claire that night. But somehow, we'd found each other anyway. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't wondering what might have been. I was looking forward to what could be.